Greetings and salutations, Internet Distance. This is Wolfphototech, and here we are with another delightful video. This time it's going to be about Avatar Legends, the role-playing game. It happens to be based on Powered by the Apocalypse. And I have to make one small note. I've only recently got this book after another friend, who is a part of my main TTRPG gaming group, got it. Because he really loves Avatar. So, you know, any opportunity to get into and check out another TTRPG is awesome with me. Second note is that I've never played a Powered by the Apocalypse based system or a heavily narrative based system. I've always been playing, say, like intermediate rule sets or heavy rule sets. To clarify this, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition from Wizards of the Coast, the 2014 version, is a moderate rule set with slight gamist mechanics, not simulationist, nor is it narrativist. So those are the three major categories in the TTRPG scene, if you ever want a little lesson about that. The first time I tried to do this video, I literally went into about a 30-minute talk at the beginning about narrativist games, gamist games, and simulationist games. Now, it was completely unnecessary. And that was basically me just trying really hard to work through all my issues to use words to most accurately describe a narrativist game, as that is the area I have the least experience with, and I had most of my experience with gamist games. So, there you go. Now, I should really do a video talking about what is a gamist game, and then another video talking about a simulationist game, and another game talking about a narrativist game. However, that gets into the other point, if you have ever had any experience with any system like Powered by the Apocalypse, please leave in the comments below what's your thoughts of it and any good advice about using it. Because, yeah, I think it's rather interesting, and I've paged through this already a few times and tried to get my understandings on this. However, I do have to say that before we get going, this book comes with 2 nice ribbons. They're not the most high quality of ribbons. If you ever look at a ribbon, a cue of a really high quality ribbon is that there is actually a set of lock stitching at the end of the ribbon that holds it together. These are just ribboned together. So if any one of these strings on the very end comes loose or pops out, the whole ribbon will just instantaneously unravel like crazy. And this is basically the case with 99.999% of all ribbons in TTRPG books, that they don't have the lock stitching on the end. Just like these, as you can see. You don't see any stitching going across the ends. Change the angle of light. See? There's very few books that actually have, with ribbons, that actually have proper lock stitching or end caps on it, because it adds a bunch of extra value, extra cost to production, and adding the stitching to it already is rather notable. Also, I do have to note that this is glue and stitch binding. You can see the little stitch base here, because it has a glue and stitch binding, as opposed to the vast majority of I just lost my pen behind my desk against the wall. The vast majority of Wizards of the Coast books don't have stitch binding in the back end, but some of them do actually have stitch binding. And it's just a matter of which printing house that they use at the time for their books. Also, side note that the covers have flex, where some other TTRPG books have very little flex, or absolutely no flex. And it's just based on the type of hardcover here. The books that tend to be high flex, tend to have actually a corrugated inner structure that allows them to flex a bit more, as you can see, and they tend to be lighter overall. Where a book that is completely hard and solid, like Cyberpunk here, Red, has quite a bit more heft, even though the book is around similar thickness. Incidentally, the covers that have less flex tend to be more durable. As you can see here, the flex actually can result in it being easily dinged, and this book is basically brand new, but it's already been dinged in the corner. This game system is developed by Magpie Games, and there's their logo on the back. And as I said before, it is based on the Powered by the Apocalypse system. However, there is no tag or banner here anywhere on the book stating that, nor is it anywhere in the book. It only states it inside the acknowledgement section down here at the bottom that it is loosely based on the Powered by the Apocalypse system. I personally don't consider that an effective means of saying, hey, I borrowed this basic game design mechanic from another book system, just like Critical Role's Illuminated World system. Having it in a little piece of text inside the book is like, yeah, our system is a little based on someone else's stuff. It really should be on the book in a box that says, this is based on Powered by the Apocalypse. This is based on the Blades in the Dark system, etc. Which, incidentally, the Blades in the Dark system is loosely based on the Powered by the Apocalypse system. There you go. I do have to say here that you have a nice little map of the world, super simplifying, with kanji. You got Avatar Legend symbol, plus a nice little quote from General Iroh or Uncle Iroh. You have a very well organized table of contents on a single page. It is always very nice to have all your table of contents either on the two pages facing each other or on just one page. You got the credits right here. You go into a 2-page spread for each chapter. Every chapter happens to have 2 pages of a scene from Avatar the Last Airbender or Korra. Chapter 1 is basically the introduction. It basically walks you through the concept of the RPG system, the basic what you need for the system, the story concepts, your heroes, the basic worlds and genres. As I have to note that in this system... Oh, yes, that's a little loud. That is a little loud. Yes. There's 5 eras here, and each of these eras take place, like the Kyoshi era, the Roku era, the 100 Years War era, the Aang era, the Korra era. At various times throughout the Avatar universe, it will oftentimes in each one of these eras will reference one of the comic books or the novels or the TV shows or anything else of that sort. And each one of these eras are closely related to a set of genres and a style that the era gets into. So there you go. You have a little page over the various the 4 kingdoms, as well as the various trainings of the system. water bending, earth bending, fire bending, air bending, weapons, technology. Incidentally, technology is kind of weapons, and weapons is kind of technology, but yeah, there you go. It gets you what you need to play in this here, and so forth. And then it jumps. This chapter 1 is literally like the shortest chapter there is in this book. Then you go into the world of Avatar, which basically does, yet again, go over some of the basic history, the basic principles of the Avatar universe, the 4 nations, yet again. This is just one of those weird little areas in this book where there's a few times where some of the information gets repeated through the book, but then each time it gets repeated, it gets expanded on. So you basically get a limited version of this in the first chapter, and then they expand it by 75% in the second chapter. And then on this page here for the kingdoms, and then they go into a 400% expansion on 2 pages for each kingdom. The basic setup to each kingdom or nation. The world of balance, And then they go into the eras. And it's important to note that when they go through the eras, they yet again remind you that each era is tied into a certain time frame between certain comic books and the TV shows and so forth. And that when they go back through this, again, they got the Kyoshi era. And then they go through every single kingdom yet again. The Earth Kingdom, the Fire Nation, the Air Nomads, and the Water Tribes. Incidentally enough, the term nomad implies that the people move around a lot, even though it kind of refers to them living mostly at 4 locations in the world, which is not exactly nomadic, but okay. And then they go into another era. And as I said before, each era basically has a preferred set of scenarios and genres and themes in which that era goes through. I'm going to go skip through all that rest of that stuff because I'm not going to go through every single page. Yet again, it's also important to note that a lot of the artwork are scenes from the actual TV shows and some from the comics. Then you get to Chapter 3, which is Fundamentals of Play, which basically gives you the basic structures of the mechanics of the system. And now, this is the really important part when it comes to a narrativist system, that a narrativist system is structured in such a fashion that varies apparently in levels of layers. Some of them are very simple, like you have an offensive action, and you have a defensive action, and you have an evasive action, and you have a social action. And then it depends on how many layers they want to put on top of those, like counters and anyways. And it typically will state that when it comes to an offensive action, it could be anything from like picking up something and throwing it at someone, or punching, or using an ability, or something like that. You have basic maneuvers inside that, but you have the freedom to manipulate and alter them all over the place. Now, one of the weird quirks inside a narrativist game, as far as I can understand, is that there's a secondary backside layer to that kind of system that's often game master facing. So when you are a game master in such a system, a player says, I'm going to do such a type of action, and as a game master in a narrativist system, it is your job to know the 30 or 40, not the 30 or 40, anywhere from 3 to 20 options of modifications to come off of that, and then you redirect the player to do X thing, and then you do something from off of that. Which is kind of the weird case of, I found when researching narrativist systems, is that they are designed to be super light and fluffy for the players. a whole lot of, it doesn't really matter a whole lot of hardcore details. However, on the Game Master side, they have a stack of things they have to be concerned about when they're doing things. So it's kind of odd and interesting. It's super light on the player side, thick as heck on the Game Master side. So you got moves and triggering moves and examples in here. Misses and failures and rolling dice and triggers and uncertainty in the system. You got some core elements like fatigue, how to clear fatigue, conditions like taking out of by conditions, clearing conditions, explain the basic concepts like afraid, angry, guilty, insecure, troubled. Little penalty, it's all even numbers like -2. You got a balance system on your principles and your bending skills. But also it talks into how to incorporate other things into it. You got a little section on starting the game, players facing side, and then you go right into making a character. Now, this is the interesting thing with creating a character in a narrative-oriented game system, that it's very important in a narrative-basing system to pick out your ideals, flaws, and bonds. I'm using Dungeons & Dragons terms to make it more simple. And then your core principles about your like internal ranking of your social hierarchy and other fun stuff like that. It's really your personality and your history of a character resulting in various mechanics coming into play. So in the case of a narrative-oriented system, you end up with 4 or 5 pages of you just trying to work out your backstory in the front of the book, because that is the meatiest thing for your character. And then you get a few pages, you go all the way back over here in the character concept. We're now talking about the character concept back here. And then you get a name. You got a ton of options for names based on stuff. And then we finally get to the bendings or the offensive combat systems of your character. Like, are you a waterbender, airbender, earthbender, weapons, firebending, technology kind of person, and so forth. Yet again, more background stuff right here. You got a basic set of examples. Hometown, demeanors, choose your look, history questions, etc. If you got a good general feel of that, here's more. Here's a little section on the stats right here. This is the stats section right here. Then you got fatigue here, explaining you got conditions, balance. You got your core principle as a character and the way you shift in your process of developing as a person as you do things that are tied to your principles, or you run into situations that go counter opposed to your principles, and then where you play it out from there. When it comes to a narrative-based system, it's all about basically character philosophy and your character story unfolding. And the combat system is kind of like, I'm just here just in case conflict shows up. Okay. So that seems to be the whole growth on it. You got do I have to fight right here in the sidebar. Combat techniques, a little short section on combat techniques. That's just this strip right here. Growth questions. Introducing your character to the party, bringing your cast together, because it's really important to structurally tie all your characters together in the system and where they're coming from. You got a section on the core moves, which is basically basic moves that your characters can perform, how it all ties together, some examples, and so forth. Plead and intimidate and push your luck and rely on your skills and training. You've got tricks here. And then you got balance moves. Help. Call someone out. Deny a call out. Yet again, this is the section on balance moves is all about story character interaction situations. So you got deny a call out, call someone out, as I said before. Resist shifting your balance. Lose your balance. What happens when you lose your balance? And then you have the advancement system in a narrativist-based system inside of this system. Now, generally, from what I've known of, when it concerns to many narrative space systems, they oftentimes favor a dice pool mechanic. Now, oftentimes, a lot of people note that whenever a system is focused on a dice pool mechanic, they tend to be shorter campaign adventure systems, because if there is a level up mechanic or a power gaining mechanic like in a dice pool based system, that if you roll a d6 and if you always win on you succeed on a 6, you have a mild success on a 5 and a 4, and you have a mild failure on a 2 and a 3, and you have a severe failure on a 1. If your character is leveling up and you gain more dice, you are more likely to succeed everything you do eventually, because you have so many dice you cannot roll a failure. Or all your failures get negated by all your successes eventually. So, there's that issue. However, if there's any contradicting information about that, go ahead and throw it into the comments below, because that's one of those things, you know. That's basically what I've understood so far. You got a section on, as I said, advancement moves, custom moves, and so forth. It's not unusual for, say, the book to have tons and tons of bundle information. Yet again, here's a section on statuses, like doomed, empowered. You got, there's a tag here that says negate and positive behind each one, so you instantaneously know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Like favored is a positive, inspired is a positive, impaired is a negative, prepared is a positive, stunned is a negative, trapped is a negative status. You got a section on basic techniques. Yet again, each one of these techniques is tied into various concepts like advance and attack, evade, observe, and so forth. A little section on weaving it all together, and a little story there. You got a section on playbooks, chapter 6, which actually focuses more on a pile of characters that you can utilize in your adventure, and various information on those characters. And so forth. Skip through all that. You got chapter 7 called Advancement, which is basically your character's leveling up mechanic. Yet again, your character doesn't have a hard level system in any. Typically, narrativist-oriented game systems don't have levels. They just simply have an advancement. If they do have a leveling up mechanic in it, it's usually very simplified. Like, you just simply roll a die to figure out if you level up, or after so many story points in the game, you gain a perk or something like that. But there is not a defined level like level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. You just get something, or your character gets slightly better, or gains a new piece of knowledge, or etc. You got growth advances, advanced techniques, and so forth in this book. And then you have chapter 8, which is running the game. You have Iro right there, pouring some tea. And this is basically the game master or GM section of the book that goes over the mechanics that you are going to have to use to narrate the game. So you got a section on agendas, baselines, guidelines. A baseline is where you basically set a minimum point and you build everything off of that point. The guideline is a projection going forward on a ruler system. GM moves. What you do, what kind of things you want to do in case the characters fail something, and then you go running a fight scene, and then you have an example of such scene. And then you got seasons and campaigns section, which basically is advice on how to start a campaign, and the various other themes and components within the campaign that you can utilize to build out. Crafting a session advice section, and so forth. Villains and seasons and so forth, because it's based on a TV show and a comic book series. Then you got a section on running adventures, which is basically adventure is a little thing inside of a campaign, and so forth. So as I said before, this book is a core rule book. So you have a lore section, a basic lore setting section, era, etc. section in the front. Then you got a player section in the center, and then you have a game master section in the back. And then we have a section here, which is a little adventure for yourself. You can run your fun stuff through that. Then you got Appendix A, which is techniques, which is basically from page 279 and back is all the appendixes. And this is actually a rather nice thing about this book, because as you can see here, all the techniques are grouped into various categories, like universal techniques, group techniques, etc., etc., etc. Water bending techniques, earth bending techniques. So when you're playing through the game as your character, you can always just go back to this little section in Appendix A, and you can always reference this stuff back here very quickly and easily. It's kind of like a little spell book for your character, because you got the universal techniques in the front and your teamwork. And then you have weapon techniques, technology techniques, and so forth. And then for the game master, you have Appendix B, which is minor NPCs, major NPCs, master NPCs, NPC groups, and characters in the avatar setting, like Kyoshi here, Iroh, Roku, and so forth. And this is also a very good section when you are first, from my personal experience, the way they have set this up is actually an effective means of gaining an understanding of how your character comes together, as it's a good example of a character sheet, as in you see you have the section here with the principal scale here. You got your fatigue level, your condition bar right here. You got the basic concepts of your character. This whole top section right here is basically your character motivations, what happens when they're in a tight jam, what do they do, what kind of things they prefer doing in certain situations. And then down here you have a little box section of your techniques. So typically, most people only have a few techniques here and there. And then you got Appendix C, which is play materials. And this is also another universal section for both players and game masters, as they can easily quick reference through this for your combat exchanges, your statuses, your basic techniques, evasion, advance, your balance moves, and so forth. And then you have a campaign creation worksheet right here, boom, which basically works through the various core acts of your campaign and what's said, what era it is in. And if you want to use a custom era, because there's a custom era box up here. And then you have another section right here that can be used that's a game master reference section for the campaign. And then there's the index. Now there is no regular character sheet in this section. However, considering how this system is designed, you probably just grab a regular piece of paper or something and just write out your information on it, and that'll work out perfectly fine. Now, I'm going to have to say, I'm not going to put a score on this book, It's taken me a few times paging through it to make everything make sense as it goes, as far as I understand. It is somewhat well organized. However, it has this pattern of it covers a concept in the front in one section, and then it has a more expanded version of that in another section, and then it repeats back to that again in another section with a slightly bit more detail in some areas and a little bit less in others. So in case you're a game master, you're going to end up running across sections where you're reading essentially the same kind of thing over again with just a little more information thrown in. And personally, I find someone with dyslexia and a little ADHD, that is a little on the annoying side, because if I end up reading the same thing again with slightly different information mixed into it, it's just a little tiring and distracting to have it to read through again. So there you go. My preliminary score of the structure of the book and the system overall is that it's probably like a 3.5 star situation. It looks like it works as far as I can tell. It doesn't look like it has any erroneous components or extra things that become extra pain in the butt going through it. However, it is really wordy in some areas, and it takes a little time to fish through some information that you've read previously in another section, and you see a lot of the things repeat again. And you have to read through it to find the new thing that you need in the book. But when it comes to the player section, it doesn't repeat too much of the same information over again, so that's good. However, I do have to say it's probably on the plus side of the 3.5, and maybe the 3.75, due to this really nice section in the very back end of the book, where it has all the techniques and has all kinds of references for game masters and players that you can easily double check and re-reference for all your stuff again. So the appendices in this book really make it more and more really usable, as they function as an exceedingly good set of quick cheat sheets for your characters. So there you go. So it just depends on what we're going to go and do. I'm going to end up having to read through this book more extensively, because I might end up in a game in the Avatar universe. However, at that time I will give a more proper review and maybe even post a video about other thoughts on the system. But yet again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you consider leaving a like and subscribing and sharing it. And I hope you have a delightful day, a nice night, a wonderful week, and a magnificent month. And see you next time. Ciao.